Welcome to Prolific Figures, presented by the United States Air Force Academy Way of Life Alumni Group. WOL places special emphasis on diversity and ensuring the success of future and current cadets and alumni. On this platform, we will engage with influential Black alumni who will share their perspectives on life before, during, and after USAFA. Join us on a journey of fruitful conversation and the celebration of USAFA's Black prolific figures.
What's going on, family? My name is Tyler Jackson, and you are tuned in to the very first episode of Prolific Figures. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this platform. So on Prolific Figures, we engage in fruitful discussion with USAFA's most influential Black alumni. And we just have a conversation with them about their life before, during, and after the Academy. It's going to be really exciting. And today we have a very special guest with us, Dr. Chris Howard. Now, let me tell you about Dr. Howard. He's a distinguished graduate of the United States Air Force Academy class of '91. He earned a doctorate in politics as a Rhodes Scholar from the University of Oxford. And after that, he earned an MBA with distinction from Harvard Business School. Dr. Howard's service to his country began as a helicopter pilot, then as an intelligence officer, where he was assigned to the Elite Joint Special Operations Command. He served in Afghanistan in the Air Force Reserve, where he was awarded the Bronze Star. He's won several awards and has served on several prestigious leadership positions thus far, and is currently the 8th president of Robert Morris University, near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He's a husband, he's a father of two, and he's an exceptional ambassador of the brand of a Black male public figure, and a lot of other things that I could not mention, or we would be here all day. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Chris Howard. How you doing, Dr. Howard?
I was afraid that my mom's email wouldn't get there in time for you to introduce me, so I'm so happy that she sent it quickly.
Yes, sir. All is well. All is well. So how are you?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
If anybody tells you they're doing great, they're either Jeff Bezos and they own Amazon, or
Right.
they're crazy. Because it's a tough time. We were dealing in a pandemic, and we've got another pandemic inside that around social justice, and another quasi-pandemic in our democracy and how we get through this election. So it's a bit of a fraught time, but tough people don't last. Tough Air Force Academy graduates do.
Hey, there we go. I see you repping your alma mater with your athleisure on. I see you.
I am.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, hey, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So during Prolific Figures, what we do, we like to warm up our guests. The first segment of our show is what I like to call our cookout questions. It's just a little conversation that we're gonna have. Imagine that you're at a cookout with your family, and you're just relaxing. Not too stressful. Just a good conversation. Warm you up a little bit before we get into it. Sounds good.
Sounds good. I keep thinking about the skit with Cat Williams in the family reunion, and I'm gonna stop thinking that's very inappropriate. So let's do some cookout questions, not some family reunion questions. Okay.
Yes, sir. Okay. First question for you. You're a football guy, right? You played a little bit of football in high school. Yeah. You're from the great country of Texas, right? We do football well in Texas. Okay. You play running back. So who has been, in your opinion, who has been the best running back in the NFL over the past 3 to 5 years?
Oh, the past 3 to 5 years. God, I haven't thought about people as of late. I'm more of an old school guy, man. So I'm gonna just take my license, young man.
Okay.
And I'm gonna go back to my day, whom you don't even know these guys, Earl Campbell and Tony Dorsett.
Earl Campbell and Tony Dorsett.
These guys came out in 77 and 78, and that's when I was when I first became a running back, like in 6th or 7th grade. And Dorsett was the fastest running back you ever seen. If you ever want to go on YouTube and look up the Dallas Cowboys versus Minnesota Vikings, 99-yard run from Tony Dorsett. And then go look up Earl Campbell, any run, because he would run over you. He was from the Houston Oilers back when I'm so old, when the Tennessee Titans were the Houston Oilers.
The Oilers. Warren Moon.
And Tony Dorsett was at the Cowboys. And so I'm just gonna go old school, because I am old school, and say Tony Dorsett and Earl Campbell.
Tony Dorsett, Earl Campbell. Okay, I can't argue with that. If it was me,
Would you say?
I'm biased. If we could put an asterisk next to this year, I would say Zeke.
Yeah.
Dalvin Cook is an amazing running back. Christian McCaffrey, before he got hurt, he was on the verge of doing
Derrick
it.
Henry's played well. Derrick Henry's
Derrick Henry, absolutely.
Zeke's had some challenges this year. The whole
Yes,
team
sir.
has, so that's, a little bit. But I love watching him run.
Right, yeah. Okay, that was a good one. Question number 2. What is your favorite Black film? Now, when I say Black film, I'm talking about a film where the producer or the main character is of African descent.
Sure. So as I did a lot of media training in my time in corporate and higher education and a little bit in the military. And one of the things they say, Tyler, is that my answers are ready for your question. So my answer is going to be 2.
Okay.
In terms of a Black filmmaker, I'd say Spike Lee, Do the Right Thing.
Mm.
And it was when I was came out when I was at the Air Force Academy. And
Wow.
Unfortunately, some of what we saw with George Floyd, some of what we saw in terms of the injustice that were enacted upon him are very reminiscent of the scene with Radio Raheem in the movie Do the Right Thing. And Radio Raheem, actually, his dad, he's from Pittsburgh. His dad was a scout for the Steelers. So it's kind of a neat background there. Another neat connection. And then the other movie I would say is Glory. So that was done by Zwick, was a director and producer, but obviously he starred Denzel Washington.
Okay.
And he won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Andrew Brower also was in it. Morgan Freeman. It tells the story of the 54th Mass coming out of Massachusetts in the Civil War. James Carney, who was kind of an amalgamation of Denzel Washington's character and Morgan Freeman's character, was the first African American to win the Congressional Medal of Honor, which is pretty powerful, compelling. Yeah. Plus, a couple of Frederick Douglass's sons also served in that unit, so it's pretty impressive history.
Okay, man, look, doing an interview and getting a history lesson. I like it.
I try.
I like it. So are you taking Denzel Washington or Will Smith as an actor?
Well, they're both very talented. I might take Chadwick Boseman. I'm throwing you all sorts of curveballs. I like it. I mean, Denzel is not. I say this with all due respect. He's the grandfather, just like Sidney Poitier handed it to Denzel, and Denzel is so gracious. He's handing it off to all these young brothers and sisters as well.
Right. Yes, sir. Okay, that was an awesome one. That was awesome. Okay, so now this is our last question. This is a question that we ask everybody that comes to Prolific Figures, some variation of this question, right? So you're a Black male, you're also a public figure, and being Black within itself, right, there is a variety of experiences. So what I'm going to ask you is, what is your personal favorite thing about being a Black public figure?
Well, it provides an opportunity and a platform to prove and to disprove. To prove it, we're supposed to be in the room, we're supposed to be in the aircraft, we're supposed to be on the ship, we're supposed to be in the corporate boardroom, and to disprove that we are folk that don't understand what leadership and service and management and all sorts of things are about. I often mentioned that my great-great-grandfather, Amos Howard, was a slave. So he's no different than the seats you're sitting on, that I'm sitting on, and the audience is sitting on, excuse me. And for him to go from being a slave, my great-grandfather, Watt Howard, being a sharecropper, my grandfather being a sharecropper and getting to a factory, my dad being the first one to go to college, Army officer. My dad was in the Army. That's why I went Air Force. My dad was 5 years in Army captain.
You had to rebel some type of way, right?
I had to rebel. And then for me to be where I am is an opportunity to talk about Black excellence.
Yes, sir.
And Black credibility. And so it's some people take that as something that's a weight. It's like Christ with Gethsemane in the cup in Gethsemane in Jerusalem. But I think it it lifts me up. It inspires me to lift my head up and try to do the right thing.
Right.
So, yeah, I see it as an opportunity.
No, absolutely. And I think hearing that from someone of your stature is really encouraging. And I know that the cadets that are gonna hear this, the future cadets that are going to listen to this, hopefully when they get a glimpse of what you said, they do feel empowered, and and that whole imposter syndrome and everything else that comes with us sometimes when we get in important places. I hope all of that goes away when they hear what you just said. So I definitely appreciate that. And I know the audience will too.
Yeah, and I want to just say here that, and I'm going to get into this a little bit about knowing yourself when I talk about my favorite quote, but When I came to the academy, I had strong English scores in SAT, very good GPA, very strong work ethic, but I didn't have great math scores.
Right.
And I had to get a waiver. And so I made all A's and B's in all my science, math, engineering, technology classes, and graduated to go on to, Harvard Business School and fly helicopters. And, I knew I was supposed to be there. Everybody has their doubts, but even when you step in for our 4 degrees they get a chance to see this. We chose you for a reason.
Yes, sir.
And even if you may or may not have some sort of challenges, and at the academy, everybody has challenges, right, Tyler? So if you're good at English, you're maybe not good in Spanish. If you're good in Spanish, you're maybe not good in physics. If you're good in swimming, you're maybe not good in shooting.
Yes,
and across the board, and that's what makes you stronger. But don't think for a minute they didn't make a mistake on you. They didn't make a mistake on me, and they don't make a mistake with those great cadets that are there right now. We wish you all the back. The long black and blue line is right behind you.
The black and blue line. Say that.
Flash Wiley.
Yes,
Wiley would say, class of '65. I think that's what he's.
Yes, sir. Flash. Yeah, we are quite familiar with Flash. Hopefully, we could get him on the show. I have to get him with him.
Get him to sing, because he can sing too. He can sing well.
All right, Flash. All right, I'm gonna call you out now.
I'm calling
you out. All right, so now we're gonna take a second and pivot into the focus quote for today, and I want to sort of introduce the focus quote segment to our audience. Our quote is normally from history, music, literature, philosophy, etc., that inspires the conversation for today. Typically, the quote comes from someone Black, but it doesn't have to. And today, our focus quote comes from yours truly, Dr. Chris Howard. So I'm going to read it, and then I want you to just share your thoughts.
Sure.
Leaders earn 3 PhDs: in themselves, in the world around them, and in leadership.
Thank you, Tyler. Let me expand. So, leaders get a PhD in themselves. That's number one. Yes. They're self-aware. Leaders, if you don't know yourself, if you don't know yourself, you can't manage yourself. You can't discipline yourself, and you cannot self-actualize. So it all starts with the man or woman in the mirror and being brutally honest with who you are, right? That's one of the reasons I think I've been successful. You asked about the secret sauce. I'll give you a little spoiler alert, is being comfortable in my skin, knowing my strengths and weaknesses, and being able to take criticism, and quite often it coming from myself. So really, really getting to know yourself, so that, like, as a football player watching film over time, you can kind of start auto-correcting. The difference between a senior on Coach Calhoun's team, by the way, Coach was 2 years ahead of me at the academy. His sister was my classmate. She was a better athlete than he was.
Oh, wow.
We called him Duck. He's a great guy. But we would, if you think about it as a football player, you go make a block, you miss the block, you're a freshman, and you learn by watching film. By the time you're a senior, you can auto-correct because you know yourself, you're self-aware. Number two, leaders get a PhD in the world around them. They're contextually aware. They understand to say, for example, when you go to the academy, your first year, you show up as a dually, as a basic cadet. You can't do anything by yourself. It's all getting your flight, go to the bathroom together, go to Fairchild, go to your training together. We treat you like there's not a lot between your ears, because we're breaking you down to build you up. Right. But over time, what happens is, by the time you are a basic cadet to the time you become a 4 degree, by the time you become a first D, you have changed. The context has changed. The cadre, the AOC, the commandant, General Clark, superintendent, they're going to treat you differently as a senior than they would as a freshman. Now, this is obvious because you've seen, that there's a difference between a first D and a 4 degree. But sometimes in organizations, what happens is an organization might start off like as a bunch of freshmen running around, but they grow and they evolve, and the leader treats them like they're still freshmen, and that zaps. That's leadership that zaps. The other thing I was going to mention is that as a leader in a certain context, you've done well. You've done well at the academy, right?
Yes.
You go off to flight school or intel school or to a squadron or whatever, and you're trying to do everything you did like you did back at the squadron in the academy. And you're going, why am I not succeeding? Because you're not back at the academy anymore.
Right.
Not that you shouldn't carry some of those things from the academy with you, integrity, character, discipline, etc. But the context has changed. Last thing, when you start at a certain level, you're running a squad. You're running a flight, and then you run a squadron, and then you run a group or wing or whatever. If you stay in, sometimes leaders that are very good at leading squadrons are not great at leading groups, right? Because they hadn't been able to change with the context. So you have to be able to think about your context change. The last thing is you get a PhD in leadership. constantly be reading about and thinking about leadership. I worked at GE. The CEO of Jeff Immelt used to say, I never saw a leader worth his and her salt that couldn't see around corners just a little bit. That's why you're always in books. I mean, I just finished, I used to work for him, General Stan McChrystal's book, Team of Teams. Great read.
Teams. Okay.
He's a former JSOC commander. Great guy, known him for about 20 years.
Right.
Always reading about leadership and trying to get better. So those are that's my quote in a nutshell.
Man, that was awesome. I'm reading a book right now called Leader Shift by John Maxwell, and it sort of talks about that same thing, being able to understand the context around you and being able to change. Not that your past experience was null and void, but you can't lead the same. Now the world is constantly evolving. So too should your leadership and how you lead people.
Tyler, you are spot on. John Maxwell is a great writer, leadership theorist, writer. I've read a lot of his work. Outstanding. And what I'm sure he mentions in his book, the hard thing about having success at a certain level and going to another level is that you had success at that previous level.
Yeah.
When you were like leading the flight, wow, he was great. Hercules, he's so good. That's great. And then you go to the next level and you crash and burn, and they're like, well, but I was so good at that. But that's a different skill set. That's why this thing about growth mindset is very important. You're very prescient, Tyler. You're reading a great book. There's very similar ideas about this contextual awareness, and just stay with it, because again, it sneaks up on you, because again, the reason you got promoted is because what you did in your previous job. Right. The reason you succeed going forward is what you do in this job. Right.
So do you think failure is inevitable as a leader? So whenever you realize that, okay, I can't lead the same way I did back in my previous position, do you think you have to fail in order to realize that? Or is that where that the PhD and the world around you comes in?
Yeah, hopefully you can avoid failure, capital F failure, by wisdom, experience, mentorship, sponsorship, etc. Those are big capital F's, so the one and done kind of things. That's right. One thing, right? We don't want to have that ultimate thing where you can't recover. But lowercase f's are to be celebrated. Lincoln, who I'm a big fan of, failed miserably as a leader, as a person running for office, in his marriage and his practice of law, until he ultimately became one of the greatest presidents, arguably one of the one or two greatest presidents in the history of our nation. Right. And he would not have done it. He didn't do it in spite of his failures. He did it because of his failure. He developed humility. Yes. He developed sagacity or wisdom. He developed a really whopping sense of humor, and and a deep and abiding faith. And but failure is all part of the equation. And the military and the service academies do a great job of giving you those micro failures, right? You come back from a GR graded review. I got a grade so low one time in a computer science class. Man, I got the grade. I was like, is that upside down?
You're right.
I've never seen a number so low. Right. It curved it, which was good. So I did okay on the curve, but that was a little micro failure, and that's okay. And you can recover from that. I studied harder and studied smarter.
I think comp sci was my lowest grade at the academy.
Yeah, let's not talk about comp sci. That was trauma.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Well, we are beyond warmed up. We're cooking with grease right now, so we kind of want to move into the content of the discussion. So, could you, for those who do not know you, could you sort of just take us back to 13, 14-year-old pre-Dr. Chris Howard? Sort of just talk about your upbringing a little bit and what led you to make the decision to go to the academy.
Sure. So when I was about 12, 13, I saw a picture of a West Point cadet. Like I said, my father had been an Army officer for 5 years, and I was very young. My uncle had been a paratrooper, 82nd, 101st Airborne. So I knew about the military.
Okay.
But I saw a picture of a West Point cadet, and I said, I want to be that. Because I always had this gene where I wanted to serve. I don't know. I always wanted to give back. I got it from my mom, I guess. And I quickly, I got a piece of paper, pen. I wrote a letter, and I said my name. I went through a book. Couldn't Google back then. There was no Google. There was no internet, no World Wide Web. It was just go to the library, get a book, find who your congressman was. I found who it was. I wrote him a letter. I said, my name is Chris Howard. I'm a good student. I'm a good athlete, and I'm a leader. And when I turned 18 and graduated from Plano Senior High School, and I was in junior high then. I want you to give me an appointment to West Point. And he sent me a letter back. He says, Chris, you seem like a fine young man, but I'm not your congressman.
Oh, wow.
Tyler, I wrote the letter to the wrong person. He forwarded it, lucky, to the right person, a guy named Steve Bartlett, who ultimately did give me an appointment to a nomination, to West Point. And so the journey began. So when I was 13, I got really focused. I understood myself. As I said before, PhD in myself when I was in 8th grade. That's about 7th grade, roughly. My years are a little bit off, but 8th grade, I had like A's and A minuses. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make straight A pluses. I made straight A pluses. You know, and I'm going to do on the football team. I'm going to join the Army JROTC. So by the time I was a senior, I was kind of that guy. I was really blessed. The grace of God, a lot of prayer. I was, president of Fellowship of Christian Athletes, won a state championship in football, which you alluded to, went 14-2, won a state championship, big time 5A football in Texas, which is a big deal.
Yeah. People know.
Yeah, that's right. Was student body president, Army JROTC battalion commander. And the day we won the state championship was the day my Army JROTC instructor told me I got an appointment to West Point as well. So it was pretty special stuff. So I was teed up very early on. I knew I wanted to serve, and then I ended up getting recruited by all 3 service academies. And then I fell in love with Coach Fisher DeBerry, my head coach, and he promised me that he'd work my tail off. Army and Navy were saying I was going to start the day I showed up, so I went to Air Force. And 3 Commander-in-Chief trophies later, go Air Force. 4 wins over Navy, 3 over Army.
Okay.
A win over Ohio State in the Liberty Bowl my senior year, 23-11, the Ohio State. And I tell Kirk all the time when I see him, you know we beat you. You know that.
Talk your talk. Yes, sir. You chose the right.
It was a good run.
Yes, sir. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right. So this is a subject that I'm excited to talk about now. No, we got to talk about this book. Money Makers.
Sure.
I'll have you know that there's a group of about 15 to 20 Black USAFA alumni, and we are working in tandem together, and we have strong desires to strategically pursue the careers that you've laid out in this book to some capacity at some point in our career.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk every day, and we are at different levels. Some people are in school right now. Some people are in the industries. Yeah. Some people are lieutenants right now. And just thank you first and foremost on behalf of the group. Thank you for pouring your resources and your knowledge into this book. I know growing up, we hear about you hear about Wall Street. You know what I mean? Like you hear about business. You hear about these industries. But where I'm from, nobody gives you the game. Like nobody tells you how. Nobody even gives you descriptions on what those careers actually are. But in this book, Money Makers, for everybody watching, you and David Snyder, who was actually your mentee, correct?
Yeah. Todd, first off, thank you for the kind words. There's a school in London that actually uses that as a textbook in one of their classes. One of the universities, which is pretty cool. So I was very humbled and flattered. David's a great guy. I met David Snyder when he was in 11th grade at Milton Academy up in Massachusetts through his parents. And he went on, he had it narrowed down to Georgetown, Duke, and Penn, ended up going to Duke doing public policy. And I was mentoring him as my life was going on. And he was like, Dr. Howard, I like public policy, but I'm thinking about banking, finance, consulting.
Right.
And he was very well connected, and I was as well. And we thought about writing a book that would be kind of a North Star for people like yourself that say, hey, I want to be in a hedge fund. What's a hedge fund? I think I want to do private wealth management, which is what my youngest son does. Okay. What is private wealth management? What's in between the venture capitalist and someone who's doing, private equity, as opposed to iBanking, investment banking. And so we wanted to kind of write that, Rosetta Stone, help people translate and understand how to do that. And then we got a book publisher, an agent, and she said, don't write it that way because it'll be in a certain part of the bookstore and you won't sell any copies. Make it a business book, but then do the North Star stuff and it'll come out fine. And we're very pleased. It's neat because it's out of print, but it turns up a lot of times. People, because it's actually sold quite well. So thank you for the compliment. And it was meant to do that. It was meant to help people navigate the world, because what happens, the world of finance and business, because what happens is language can be weaponized in this sense.
Yeah.
You come into an organization and everybody's speaking in acronyms. This should sound familiar. because we
Oh,
are
absolutely. Come on now.
and DOD
Right.
and all sorts of CS-37. I wonder, Firsty, whatever.
Right.
And it becomes a source of power.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm talking all this, and I'm saying all these things about, derivatives and, hedge fund and alpha and beta and blah, blah, this. You're sitting there going, what is he talking about? It's like they're speaking Greek and Chinese.
Right.
And like I said, people will hold that over you. But if you can get into the vernacular, if you can understand the language and break it down, you realize these people are not nearly as, impressive as they're trying to come across. Exactly. And so that goes back to this whole thing about we're supposed to be in the room or the Zoom where it happens, either one. We're supposed to. Yeah. And if you don't know, then that's what we need to mentor each other and help each other out. I have a good friend, my youngest son's godfather. He went to Morehouse and then he went to Wharton. And he has a great joke. He says, Chris, I'm good in finance, but I went to Wharton, which is really known for being a great finance school. Nice. So that when I asked people a question in my work about finance, they wouldn't question if I knew, they wouldn't question my being there. Right. And that's what happens to people that look like us sometimes. We can be intimidated. We can be having to run an extra gauntlet just to kind of prove we're supposed to be there. So anyway, I hope that book helps. But in general, talking to people and when you don't get it, finding someone, the mentors, the sponsors, and even your compatriots, right, to help you out. My best friend is Rodney Lewis. He's my teammate. My roommate. I was 4th Group Commander. Back then, we called it Deputy Commander for Operations. He was my number 2. African American as well. He was a White House fellow. I'm a Rhodes Scholar. Okay. He's a Major General. He works. He's 8'5", I think, future something like. He's in the 8'5" now. Okay. C-17 guy, and we spent a lot of time talking to each other about being a senior executive, because we don't want someone to put something over on us because we were afraid to reach out and get that information to be able to be part of the conversation. Because again, so much of this is in life versus what you know, then it's who you know, then it's who knows you, and then it's how you communicate your game, as you kind of said before. And I've got a lot of people in my corner that I have no problem asking dumb questions of. Right. Are you sure? And then and there is no dumb question you could ever ask me. Yes, sir. No dumb questions, especially like yourself. And so it's important to do that, because sometimes we want to play a little bit of the Lone Ranger. I got this. I got to be tough. You need to be tough, but great leaders are tough, but they're also vulnerable, right? I mean, you don't make it through flight school by yourself. You don't make it through Ranger school by yourself. You don't make it through comm school by yourself. We know this as cadets, but sometimes we take put a little bit too much bigger rock on our shoulders. We got to link up, swim buddies, SEAL team, link it up. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. So, man, so 10 years later, right? You wrote the book in 2010. It's 2020 now. Would you add anything to it? Yeah, I probably would, only because my other son's doing it. So for those of you who haven't read the book, it talks about various sectors that you go into in business. I mentioned hedge funds, private equity, venture capital, consulting, sort of the corporate route, the entrepreneurial route. I don't think we did a chapter on commercial real estate. We did not, or did not. You did not. My bad. I did not. So my oldest son, he does commercial real estate in Dallas, and that is a very interesting area, because there's a sales transactional piece and there's a finance investment piece. And he's figuring out right now that he's gone into the broker side and he's done well, but now he wants to get on the finance side. I wish I would have written a book 10 years ago that included some of that. I'm learning. It's fun because I'm learning from him and I'm opening up my network. I know people that do this stuff, but I wish I would have tried to decode it a bit, because I think that, just like, and I also do something on, I think I did something on private wealth management. My other son does private wealth management. Right. I think military people if they decide to transition to the civilian side, I think commercial real estate is an area like those other areas where we're going to be particularly well suited. Right. Comfortable with math, comfortable with numbers, comfortable with building relationships, willing to kind of go out there and try new things and risk some rejection. And it can be very lucrative. There are more real estate millionaires than any other type of any type of millionaire out there. So that's the one, Tyler. Great question. Great question. That's the one area I wish I would have put in there, something around commercial real estate.
All right. Well, I'm glad we got the exclusive here on about that extra career field. So, so we're talking about this, and you mentioned both of your sons, right now they're kind of going that route, but you ultimately chose the business of education. So why did you make that transition to the education side as opposed to staying in? Because you worked at GE briefly, right? So why did you make that transition? What about the business of education stuck out to you?
Yes. So first off, knowing myself, the PhD in myself, I'm kind of a focused, eclectic focused person. I like lots of things. I was a guy who, liked physics and liked political science. I was a guy that used to come back from football practice, do the 40-degree training stuff because I like that stuff. I like the hardcore military stuff. I like being a ball player. I've always been someone with a very nuanced and sort of multiple interests, and education allows one to do that. But going back to the transition, the arc of it, military guy, even when I did my doctorate at Oxford, thinking about political, military, national security stuff, got to a point about 8 years in service, having gotten my doctorate, having been a chopper pilot, having transitioned to special operations intelligence, which is a kind of an odd move anyway. I said, I don't know anything about how money works or how finance works. I mean, I wrote a book called Money Makers, but at that point, I didn't know much about money. And I said, I'm going to transition out into either a Fortune 500 job, a consulting job, or going to a top business school. I went to Bristol Myers Squibb first in a rotational program for junior military officers that were minorities or women. And I got a chance to see sales, marketing, finance, strategic planning, all these things around business. And then they sent me to Harvard Business School. And then, so then after Harvard Business School, I was headed to GE as a junior exec, got called up, went to Afghanistan as a HUMINT guy. But when I was leaving Afghanistan, the J2, I was the Human Intelligence Operations Cell Chief. And he said, the guy was great. He says, he was an Army guy. He says, Chris, how are you going to go to GE and sell toilet seats for a living? I said, man, I'm going to sell toilet seats for a living. I'm going to be a junior executive at GE and corporate headquarters, driving corporate initiatives for this multi-billion-dollar company.
Right.
And he said, well, you know what? You're really good at this and you love it. So it made me pause and have a moment of discernment, Tyler. And I think everybody has this at a point in their career. If you read a book called My American Journey by Colin Powell, General Colin Powell, he talked about at various points in his career, he would stop and literally write a note and say, should I stay in or should I get out? So I had to kind of go back in. I was in the reserve at the time, or get out. And so I decided that at that point that I was going to go back to corporate, but I thought there was something else I needed. I thought maybe I'll go to a nonprofit. So I called some friends about doing that. I called some friends about going to higher education. And I met a guy I had a mentor from Wofford College who said, Chris, we need you in higher education yesterday. And this is going back in the military to higher education, because he goes, you're a academic, you're a practitioner, you're an academic, you'd be great. So I go back to GE. Then I literally bumped into a guy, the president of the University of Oklahoma, walking down the streets of Oxford while I was at GE on a business trip. And we started talking, and he hired me almost a year and a half later to go work for him as an associate vice president. And so in my mind, I knew I wanted to transition to something different, kind of in this, having done the corporate thing, having done the military thing, thought about nonprofit stuff. I had a nonprofit, a small nonprofit where my wife and I bring kids over from South Africa. We were running on the side. Right. But the school thing, the university thing seemed like it fit, and it was great because I don't have to choose. If there are 100 Chris Howards, Tyler, I can bring 99 to work every day, because at one time it's football, and then it's the philosophy department, and it's faculty negotiations, and it's fundraising, then it's corporate relations, and it's race relations, it's government stuff. It's for me, I don't have to go to work. I have the privilege of working. And so it's been a great fit. And I will not tell you that it came easy or quick or it was straight. It was very squiggly. Right. And but I'm happy that I'm here-ish. I'm not here, but I'm here-ish.
I wanted to write down a couple of those books that you mentioned, but obviously I have the recording, so I'm gonna go ahead.
There you go. Smart man. Work smart, not hard. We want to work hard, but work smart, and work hard enough, but work smart. So there you go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I actually do want to ask you something. So if we could back up a little bit, you spent some time at Harvard Business School. What was that experience like? If you could, I feel like everyone's heard of Harvard, no matter where you're from in America, right? You've heard of Harvard to some capacity. And I know to some people going to Harvard is like the dream. Yeah. How was that experience for you?
Yeah, it was pretty phenomenal. In fact, you know, my wife, I think you know that my wife is from South Africa.
Yes, sir.
She's from Johannesburg. And when I found out I got into Harvard Business School, just talk about the brand equity, the international global brand equity. I was talking to my father-in-law. He's like, "Wow, Sonny, I'm so proud of you going to Harvard Business School." And he was in Johannesburg. So that means so the name carries. I mean,
yes, absolutely.
Even South Africa, you know, Thailand, England, everybody knows about Harvard.
Right.
So I like to take it back 2 steps and I'll roll it forward. So at the academy, I learned discipline. The ability to work through hardship, trying experiences and get through it, grind my way, how to grind in the classroom, grind on the football field, grind in the parade field, just grind.
Yes, sir.
Oxford, I learned how to be more intellectual. So the first day that I went there, my supervisor, Dr. Nigel Bowles, said, Christopher, you mustn't trust books.
Huh?
He said, you write like an engineer. We need to open your mind up. This is the time to open up. And so, I went from, getting up at 0600 for morning meal formation to, people barely getting up at 1000 hours to go to their tutorials or what have you. But the big takeaway there was, it was really an opportunity to, when I use the word intellectual, I don't mean it in some sort of stuck up way, but really wrestle with sort of existential questions about knowledge and wisdom and how to formulate sort of a very high notion of an intellectual problem, what have you.
Right.
Harvard Business School taught me how to analyze, break things down, big problems into small problems. You do something called case studies. The Harvard Business School case study methodology is very famous. And you use a case of maybe 15, 20, 25 pages to learn everything from accounting to finance to strategy to marketing. And so, it would start off like this, Tyler Jackson was the young vice president headed to Shanghai to open up the first Walmart store. He had a team of part Chinese, but he brought 2 expatriate Americans with him. He had to deliver on the bottom line in terms of profitability. He had to take into account the foreign exchange rate. And then that's the way the case starts, right? And so, and these are real, true cases. You are the real protagonist. The cases are written from people's point of view that lived through it. And then there's about 20 pages of stuff. And then the professor, and then it says, what should Tyler do to be profitable in China? And then, so you're the protagonist case. And they turn to me and they say, Chris, what should Tyler do? You got 85 people in the classroom and they're really, really smart with big egos. And they're looking at you and you gotta start. It's like stand up in flight school, by the way. It's very similar, to EP stand up in flight school. You have the aircraft, you have a malfunction with an engine or whatever. But sharp, crisp analytics and analysis with a paucity, and it's the last thing I'll say here, Tyler, being a little long-winded, I apologize.
No, you're fine.
With the paucity of data, you do not, by definition, when they give you the case, they give you a bunch of head fakes. They give you stuff in there that you don't need. They give you these charts and historical tabulations that you don't need. They give you superfluous stuff. You got to dig around and you got to make a case for that. And that's what life's like. Whether you be a squadron commander, a wing commander, whether you be a university president, the CEO of a company, CEO of a bank. And I know this because I talk to my friends that are doing these things now. And, you kind of live inside that, the ability to analyze, not be paralyzed, make the best decision and move forward and execute.
Yeah. Wow. So through your experience, right, you talk about the hard work and dedication that you got from the academy. Then you talk about strengthening your intellect by going to Oxford, then wrapping those things up and bringing it to the problem solving space at Harvard, taking big problems, bringing them to small problems. Yep. How are you combining those 3 skills to what you do now?
Yeah, every day, man. It's so the job of a university president, like I said before, is very eclectic. So right now, we're, like Air Force, we're dealing with COVID. So it's a public health problem. I'm applying principles that I learned in business school about breaking down problems of, how many people in the classroom, how quickly, how much you have to sanitize, what's the optimal time for people to come to class to go away. I mean, I got a whole team working on these things, but my mind is in that world of the analytical. From an intellectual standpoint, we are redesigning our core curriculum. And what does a class of 2021 Robert Morris University graduate need to have? What does he or she need to have in their toolkit? So, for example, in our business school, we have 4 schools. In our business school, working with our dean and our provost, she's decided, and I agree intellectually, that every student has to take Amazon Web Services cloud computing. So everybody has to do, because the cloud is ubiquitous. Everything happens in the cloud. So we figured that everybody has to have some competency, not to have mastery, but some competency and exposure to the cloud and how you work in the cloud, how you work applications in the cloud. That's an intellectual sort of discourse. And then the discipline part, man, it's all a grind.
Yeah.
We've all been hunkered down for 7 months. I've been, I feel like I'm at the jock in Afghanistan trying to get Osama bin Laden, or trying to get the Taliban, because it's that every day there's a problem set in front of us. I got off the phone about an hour before this call with my entire leadership team working through a problem. And there'll be another one tomorrow and another one the next day.
Yes,
it's like there's always a always a GR. You guys still call them graded reviews, right? GRs?
You call them GRs. I still got PTSD. So
there you go. It doesn't go away, sorry. But there's always going to be a GR. There's always going to be, we used to call them Sammys, which was an inspection. There's always a parade. There's always a football game. There's always Siri. There's always something. And you can deal with that weight on you all the time and find a way to kind of, if you do yoga, kind of find that tension, but relaxation.
Right.
That's a skill. And there's a lot of people that can't do that. And we as Service Academy graduates, we can.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'm thinking about something here. So I'm about to pivot a little bit. Probably take
go ahead.
Little hard right here. But so when you graduated in 91, that was during the Rodney King riots, right? Now you are in a very, very public space. And in the past few years, we've had, the Sandra Bland's, the George Floyd's, Ahmaud Arbery's, Breonna Taylor, Eric Gardner, you name them, right? How do you, as a public figure, what do you bear in mind as you engage in those discussions? And I ask this because I talk to a lot of the cadets, and that's a question that keeps coming up. How do I have this conversation knowing that I am a Black face in a predominantly white space?
Yeah, let me come at that at a couple of different angles, because where I am and where I'm sitting now is a little different than I would have been as a cadet. So I was actually a lieutenant at Oxford in graduate school on the Rhodes Scholarship when Rodney King happened. So it was weird because I was actually with my American friends on the roads watching on BBC what happened with Rodney King. But that doesn't take away from my answer, which goes back from a great civil rights leader that says that I am sick and tired of being, Fannie Lou Hamer was her name. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, because I see a continuum from, 401 years ago, from the first enslaved person coming to America in Jamestown, 1619, all the way up to the beating of Emmett Till in the 50s, the beating of John Lewis in the 60s. You know the story of Emmett Till, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, of course. So John Lewis and, Brother Lewis, who just passed away, all the way up through Rodney King. And now we have George Floyd, who what I call a public lynching, 8 minutes and 46 seconds where somebody stood in his neck, and that guy looks like you and he looks like me. And I feel like I can't breathe when I watch that. Yeah. So what I do right now, and I have the privilege and honor and the responsibility of being a senior person, right? Being a flag equivalent out there, to call out my truth. Yeah. And the truth is that there is structural racism in this country. We have been brutalized, and that we have a responsibility to speak to that. And I've said that in many, many different forums, right? I've said 100% clear that this guy was brutalized, and a big part of it because he's Black, and it's the structural racism is a part of that. and we have to do better. And I've been able to call that out in a way that would have been different as a cadet. On the one hand, as a cadet, you have in common the long blue line. You have a sense of duty, honor, country, serving your country, and you have a unified vision of serving this nation, so that in some ways it's easier. You have in African terminology, they call it Ubuntu. There can be no me without, there can be no me without we. Now, you never called that when you were a cadet, but that's what it was. Yes. And so in some ways, you know, you guys can quote unquote kind of see through color, but that's not really true. Because even when I'm talking on these Zoom calls and these meetings in my form as a president, my lived experience as an African-American is different than white Americans. And I call that out and I speak to that. And so that's one of the things I've been able to do as a leader, talk about getting followed by police when I was in Plano, Texas, to my front door because I was Black. Walking down the street in Oxford with a hoodie on and a cop coming over the top of a curb and asking where I was going. Taking a train through Europe, going through from Austria down to Ljubljana, Slovenia, and a guy walking into the train area, opened up the door in our area where there were 7 of us, all, you know, mostly whites from all over Europe and America on this trip together, and him demanding to see my passport, not anybody else's, but my passport. When I worked at NATO one summer, going and knocking on the door and going to get an apartment, and the woman saying no Blacks, you know, and there's more of that, dating a woman who was told that if she ever dated a Black person, her parents would disown her, her grandparents would disown her. And so I speak truth to that, you know, I rev it up. And, but for you all, you want to be, I don't want to say careful, you just want to be aware, because you got to get back in the foxhole together. And, you know, sometimes these structured, moderated conversations, we launched an anti-racism task force. So we have professionals helping us. It's like learning how to fly a plane or learning how to, you know, learn how to fly a drone. You need an instructor. You need some scaffolding to help you get it right so you won't crash and burn. Hopefully you all are having some structured conversations, but also with your boys and your girls, your friends, you have a level of trust where you're like, let's go there. And kind of acknowledging each other. We're going to have a tough conversation. Like I sent you with my friend, Bill Wasilius, my classmate. I sent you some links. He's the CEO of a cybersecurity company. He and I had 4 conversations about race about a month and a half ago. I hope you can share those YouTube clips. No. Tyler, I do want to do one more thing real quick. I alluded to it in our pre-talk, a little bit about my role with Way of Life Committee, because it kind of informs my journey. Yeah, so when I came from Plano Senior High School, which was 1,300 people in my graduating class. Everything in Texas is big hair, big football, big classes. Yes. Sir. So when I was there, I was one of 28 African Americans, and I had great success. Before that, I had lived in predominantly white neighborhood, mixed neighborhoods, Black neighborhoods, white neighborhoods, and so this last neighborhood I lived in, my dad was a division manager at UPS, was predominantly white. So my sensibility, and I went to a Black church, and I was the double consciousness of an African American. When I showed up at the Air Force Academy, I didn't know the utility of a Black student union, a Way of Life group, Way of Life committee. I had friends that were in it, and I would go to some of the events, but I really wasn't that involved. Right. And you know, I remember and I was a pretty conservative guy, more conservative then because of the Cold War and some other things. Really big fan of Reagan, and you know, going and defending ourselves against the Soviet Union and communism. But I also had a real deep admiration and understanding of the civil rights movement and Black history. I remember my sophomore year, I was and I talked to Nathan Dow about, he said he had some similar experiences, Major Dow, doing his PhD over in Northwestern. He was a wing commander. Yeah. Everybody knows Nathan. Yeah. Nathan. But I was at the table my sophomore year. It was the second behind that Jesse Jackson ran for president in 1988. He was a serious candidate. And I remember there was a white cadet next to me, I think it was a junior, and he said something like this. He said, Jesse Jackson doesn't have the right to run for president, or he should never run for president. That's the look I gave too. I was like, what? I mean, wow. You might not like him or like his politics, but what are you saying he didn't have the right to run for president? And so that was a real epiphany for me. So here I was, an African-American, informed primarily as of late by a majority white experience, although I still had a lot of Black people in my life, but I was informed by very, you know, and then I kind of took a step back and I, you know, and I kind of said, you know what? Reminder, Chris, you are a black man in a white man's world, and you need to understand your place in it and yourself and your journey. And it didn't hurt, because that's when Public Enemy got really, really big. Chuck D and Flavor Flav.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, I was listening to lots of Public Enemy.
Yeah.
Man, I was a super strat, you know, cadet wing commander, which we used to call it back then. But man, I was really listening to Eric B and Rakim and Public Enemy, and trying to understand what it meant to be a black man. And there, you know, Tribe Called Quest. It was great. It was a great. And then I happened to take this is very important. I'll stop here. I happened to take second semester of my freshman year an African American literature class. Wow. A guy named Verner Mitchell, Major Verner Mitchell. It's a class. He was captain at the time. They only offered it every so often. It was me and a guy named John Scott. We only 2 freshmen in it. And so I had this amazing, and I think he was a Tuskegee graduate. He was a wonderful guy. I think he was a communication officer. All this rich Black literature that was there. Then I was listening to some hip hop, and I had that experience. Well, the Way of Life Committee became much more real to me then. Yeah. I wish I would have been more active then than I was. But what a great way to kind of be in many worlds simultaneously and amongst people. And I love my white brothers and sisters and my brown brothers and sisters. I love the whole blue line, all of it. But It was special. The Way of Life Committee provided something that I needed in my life, space, and it still does. It is an organization. It does the equivalent at Harvard, the equivalent at Oxford, and other associations. It provides that space for us to be us.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely appreciate you speaking life about the Way of Life Committee. When I was there, I definitely participated. Not enough of my friends, especially my friends who are athletes, not enough of them did, in my opinion, my own humble opinion. Don't need to go into the reasons why, but I don't think there's an excuse, in my opinion, for why anybody who identifies as an African American at the academy to not participate in the Way of Life Committee, and for alumni to not be engaged. There is absolutely no excuse. We have so much going on, but hey, I don't want to get into a.
No, it's great. Those are great comments, Tyler. Those are great comments, and you know, like I said, I have not any regret, but a little bit of remorse. But like I said, it was always there.
Yes, sir.
It was always there, and I'm glad it is now.
Yes, sir. All right, so I'm gonna respect your time. Have a couple of more questions for you, sure. just really quick. So now let's talk about your wife for a second.
Sure.
I was doing my research about you, and then I stumbled across your wife's profile and her bio. Very amazing woman, and I know you speak highly of your wife as well. So I kind of just want to give you the floor and sort of just speak to how your wife has helped you in your career and you all together as one brand.
Well, she's the strongest woman I know, and she's beautiful inside and out. And what was so powerful about meeting her? Well, first off, when I first met her, August 3rd, 1993, when I went to South Africa to visit a friend of mine. Oh, I remember.
Yeah.
The first time I saw her, the second day I was there, and a friend of mine, an South African Rhodes Scholar, he was family friends. First time I saw her, I said I was going to marry her. I didn't tell her that. I told my mom that night. So it was love at first sight. She's a beautiful woman. And then as I learned, very gracious and strong. And why do I say strong? So my wife is colored, COLOURED. So she's mixed. In South Africa, they have black, they have color, they have white. So she grew up in a mixed colored community during apartheid South Africa. And so the stories she tells about growing up were very similar to the stories my mom and dad told about growing up in Jim Crow South in Texas. And so they would tell my soon-to-be wife, my fiance, and my mom and dad would tell these stories about not being able to go certain places.
Yeah.
Not to be able to eat, not to be able to get changed, being literally de jure, which means by law, second class or third class. And for her to keep her dignity about that was phenomenal. She was the first colored or black woman to go to this nursing hospital in South Africa as a nursing student, and to put up with that indignation, which is a 19-year-old woman that I put up with some stress and strain, but it was very different for her. So she brings this grace and this dignity and this wit that has really completed me. She's much more savvy than I am.
Right.
She sees things and she literally hears things that I don't hear, sees things that I don't see. I had an African American Army general told me when I was over in Hawaii as part of my mobilization that, you know, his wife, they would kind of compare notes after a dinner party or whatever. And he was like, is that really what happened? And I go, you got a wife like that too? And by the way, I'm not saying in a sexual way, it could be either way, it could be your husband, your wife, or whatever. But my wife is just very, very, very good. And talking about, you know, being contextually aware, there's so many things I just kind of step back. She's a shrewder negotiator than I am. She's just tougher than I am. Yeah. So we do tough stuff. I let her do it. You know, I carve out that space and let her handle it. And there's some things that I kind of bring to the fight. We have our last thing I'm going to say, we started a foundation about 20 years ago to bring South African kids of color, Black kids, Indian kids, colored kids to visit the United States, and to kind of, we call it, it's called Impact in Lives Foundation. And we bring them over to do an educate, enlighten, and engage tour so they can see American civil society in action. And it's been a joy to have her be kind of the executive director. I was on the board. I was the founder. Now I'm on the board. It's been neat to see her every summer, save this summer, pretty much bring 5 to 10 kids over and that are college students and shepherd them around the United States for about 14 days.
Wow.
From Boston to Atlanta to Dallas to DC. It's powerful. And she's tough on them though.
Yeah.
And she's been tough on our boys. She's great, tough love. And she's raised, you know, and I was gone a lot. We've raised, and she should take more credit than me, raising 2 fine young Black men who know who they are and are not in any way gonna shrink from that. So thank you for giving me a platform.
What is your secret sauce? Like, what is the key? Like, what do you do?
So 2 things. One is, like I said before, really know myself. Know yourself and just be honest with yourself. You know, I remember when I'm making a transition going from corporate to higher education, I had an executive coach, and he says, Chris, you have this opportunity to leave GE to go to Oklahoma. He goes, you're afraid, aren't you? I go, yeah. He goes, that's okay, own it. Own being afraid of this move. It's okay. Because some people won't face up to that. Mm-hmm. And so, but I've done like micro examples of that my whole life. Mm-hmm. And then I've got another mantra, just 2 more things. My mom always said, one to whom much is given, much is also expected.
Yes, sir.
My mom wrote her COVID memoir. My mom's 73 years old. I lost my dad about 2 years ago. Rest in peace. But my mom wrote a 75-page memoir about her life. And she had a tough life, but she had a beautiful life. And she was outside of Waco, Texas, a place called Marlin. And a little house, not much, 8 brothers and sisters. And at one point in 9th grade, Tyler, they didn't have indoor plumbing, so he had an outhouse. They cut the electricity off for 6 months because my grandfather couldn't pay the electric bill. My mom graduated valedictorian in high school.
Oh, wow.
My mom spent the summers picking cotton because you couldn't work in a store or a restaurant.
Yeah.
Her hands are rougher than mine. Mm. And, you know, when she says, one to whom much is given, much is also expected, I got a lot. My brother got a lot. He played football at Baylor. He's a successful business guy, great family, great guy. We just didn't grow up with a lot of excuses because our parents didn't have a lot, and they gave us this platform, and we just can't screw it up. Yeah. And so that's the other part. And the last thing is that my mantra in life as I moved up the ranks in my life, because now you have multiple opportunities. You know, I talk to my friends that are transitioning out of the military, whether they be corporals or whether they be colonels or whether they be admirals or whatever. You know, at one point it's going to open up and it's going to be like, you can do what you want to do. You don't have to wear the uniform anymore. And it's happened sooner, you know, happened years ago for me, but I kind of developed a mantra called this. It says, I want to lead, I want to serve, and I want to grow. Lead, serve, grow. So when I'm in a position, those are my parts of my tripod there, Tyler. Yes. And if one of those things gets a little wobbly, it is time to move on.
Yes, sir.
Or to make a change. So yes. Right now I'm leading, I'm serving, and I'm growing, and I'm happy. But if I'm not leading, serving, or growing, then it's time for me, and better for the institution, for me to do something else. Now I have no idea what it's going to be.
Yeah.
But I'll be leading, serving, and growing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So to this point in your career, as you look back, you've had a very, very prolific career. If your career were to, you know, stop right now, you were just to retire. But what is something that you are looking forward to in your career?
I want to scale. You know, I went from running, you didn't mention, I ran another school for almost 7 years called Hampden-Sydney College. It's more like Colorado College, a smaller D3 school.
Okay.
And now I've gone from running that school of about 1,000 students with about, 500 employees, to running a school with 5,000 students, 2,000 employees, operating budget from 60 million to an operating budget of 180 million roughly.
Right.
I like the idea of doing more for more, for more people, that is. And so, leading, serving, growing, helping, empowering people to achieve their hopes, dreams, and aspirations, and doing it on a larger scale. That might be positional, isn't like my job, but it also might be on serving on the Knight Commission on Intercollegiate Athletics with like David Robinson and Arnie Duncan,
Right.
former Secretary of Education, or the Olmsted Foundation. And I encourage everybody out there, read about the Olmsted Foundation, a great program for captains and majors to apply to be able to study abroad. And you all on this call will be eligible for it. And think about it when you're a cadet. If you have any questions, let me know. And it's very easy to find online. So maybe serving on a corporate board in the not too distant future. These are ways I want to kind of magnify my ability to serve. So that's what I'm thinking about.
Yes, sir. The marathon continues for you, huh?
Amen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, Dr. Howard, we definitely appreciate your time. Before we let you go, we want to ask that you give one book recommendation, and we want to ask that you give one final thought. Keep in mind that you have you have the eyes and the ears of the entire population of Black Academy graduates and Black cadets. So one book recommendation and one final thought given your audience.
Sure. I did show it earlier, and I think it's a great book. It's called Team of Teams. It's by Stan McChrystal, General Stan McChrystal, and he talks about the fact that you create an organization with shared consciousness, and then you create after that empowered execution. So really complex, breaking complex problems down using all these natural assets. It can be done in the business world or in the military. He used it in Iraq and Afghanistan to coordinate and get people thinking as a cohesive unit across these different teams and what have you, and then pushing that execution, empowering people to do the kinetic or the, whatever the shot is, or it didn't have to be the kill shot, whatever, pushing it down to the lower echelon. And having worked for him twice, having worked for him in Afghanistan and known him for a long time, he's a friend. It's a great read. That's one. The other one I would mention is a book called On Becoming a Leader by Warren Bennis. So for your younger cadets, that's a very good read as well, On Becoming a Leader. And then in terms of the second question was what advice I would give. So when I left Harvard Business School, a guy named Josh Margolis was my organizational leadership professor. Great guy. And I went through, by the way, I was a little older. I was one of the oldest guys in my class. So he's called me Yoda because I was older. I've been military. It was great. So my professor was younger than me. Great guy, Josh Margolis. And so as we were leaving, one of the things he did at the end of class, 80 people in the section, he shook everybody's hand as they left. And I think he said to me, he says, Chris, I'm going to be on your personal board of directors, right? And no matter what you do in life, I'm going to be on your personal board of directors. And so twice I've actually brought Joshua Margolis to my leadership team and actually done training for them at Hampden-Sydney and here at Robert Morris. I've called him on issues that I'm chewing on. I got another guy named Jan Rifkin, who's another one. And it doesn't have to be Harvard Business School people. I've got other people. Jim Cash actually is a Harvard guy, but Will Gunn, who's is an alum of the Air Force Academy, is on my personal board of directors. So there are 3 to 7 to 9 people that you keep in your circle. So when you're doing your life and living your life and coming up to these decision points and nodes, you can go back to them and say, what do you think? Yes. Some will be contemporaries, some will be senior, some will be very senior, some will be Black, some will be white, some will be military, some will be non-military. But create your own personal board of directors.
Yes, sir.
Use it, and over time you might have to replace people.
Yes,
but you should have a couple of people kind of on speed dial, old school term. You can ask these questions of, because when you get to that decision point, and you'll know when you get to it.
Yes, sir.
You don't want to do it by yourself. Of course, you got your prayer and your faith. Hopefully, you got your family, but there's another group that you need. I'm not talking about your boss, but this is a personal board of directors that you cultivated for much time. So I'm proud to say that I am officially on Major Nathan Dow's personal board of directors.
Hey.
I've been trying to get off for years. He will not let me go. Every time I get away, he reels me back in. I'm happy to be there for Nathan just like I've been there. This like Will Gunn, people like Will Gunn and Flash Wiley, Charles Phillips, they've been there for me.
Been there for you. Yes, sir. Personal board of directors. That's a good gem right there. I think everybody will benefit from that. No matter what your demographic is, no matter if you're a cadet, alumni, listening to this years down the line, having a personal board of directors is something I definitely subscribe to.
It will serve you well. It'll
Yes,
serve
sir.
you well. I promise you.
Thank you so much. Well, all right. That is about our time. So I am going to let you go, let you get back to your wife. Thank you so much for your time, and Prolific family. I know you all are going to enjoy this one.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you.